Good evening. My name is Peggy Fowler, principal here at Palm Harbor Middle School. I just want to welcome you tonight to our Listen and Learn session. At this time, I will turn it over to our moderator, Dr. Seymour Brown.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler, for hosting us tonight. Welcome, everyone, to this Community Connections Listen and Learn session. I am Seymour Brown, Director of Office of Strategic Partnerships, and I will be your host and moderator this evening. The purpose of this series is to provide an opportunity for the stakeholders of Pinellas County to engage with the school board, superintendent, and district leadership, which is imperative in promoting continuous improvement for our students, families, staff, and community. Following the success of our Superintendent's Listen and Learn series last year, the board and superintendent committed to continuing this series. The session tonight here at Palm Harbor Middle School is the first in a series of 3 annual community meetings. These sessions represent their commitment to be visible in the community as we continue to strengthen our partnerships both as a district and within school communities. Hosting our sessions geographically allows the school board, superintendent, and district staff who serve those schools to be present and to hear directly from the stakeholders. PCS Community Listen and Learn sessions are open to all stakeholders, students, families, staff, parents, and community members. To start things off, I would like to give an opportunity for our board members and the superintendent to introduce themselves and welcome our stakeholders. School Board Chair Hine, would you like to start the introduction?
I'm happy to, yes. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Laura Hine. I was elected to the school board just in 2020. I have a 4th grader at North Shore Elementary and a 7th grader at John Hopkins Middle School. And it was when my 7th grader was coming of age for school that I came alive to all the opportunities and possibilities that there are in education. And also as a veteran, just recognizing how important our education system is. More than 90% of the people in our military go to public schools. We absolutely have to have excellent public schools for a number of reasons: national security, economic prosperity, and then our health and vitality. So with that, I said I'd like to get involved. I became more and more involved until I ran for school board. So I'm really happy to be here with you, happy to answer any questions. It's been a real pleasure serving on the school board.
Thank you everyone for being here this evening. My name is Stephanie Meyer and I am school board member for District 6. I was elected in 2022. I look forward to hearing from each of you tonight and answering your questions. Thank you very much for being engaged in your children and in your children's education. It's absolutely vital that we have community engagement in our public schools, and so thank you for being here.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. I'm Eileen Long. I have been in this county for about 42 years, first as a teacher, an acting assistant principal, a VE specialist. I'm also a mother of 2. Both of my children are products of the Pinellas County Schools. My daughter is about to enter medical school. She's working on her master's, and she will be going to Marsoni. And my son, he is working in the Walter Pownell. He is handicapped. He went through this special ed, but he got a regular diploma and did extremely well. And it shows that when you really stand behind our teachers and you work with them, anything is possible. My husband Robert was in the Army, and now he's at Osceola Middle. He's in drop. So our whole family is education. And I love this. I love working with kids. I mentor children in the county. And this is just what it's about. This is what is the foundation of our county. And we have to keep it great. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Kevin Hendricks, school superintendent in my 2nd year as superintendent here in Pinellas County. Prior to that, I oversaw academics in the school district for 5 years, was a high school principal, high school teacher, have worked at schools both in this area and in our South County area, and looking forward to tonight's discussion. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you. To start things off, we will first give the superintendent an opportunity to provide an overview. Next, we will conduct the question and answer with the superintendent and board members. As you came in this evening, you received an index card to write your questions on. If you need an additional card or have already written your question, just raise your hand and a staff member will come by to collect or provide you with another card. For those online, you can simply enter your questions into the chat. Following the question and answer, there will be an opportunity for all stakeholders to provide feedback regarding the district's cell phone policy within the Code of Student Conduct, and Superintendent Hendrick will give a brief overview. Everyone will have an opportunity to participate in the survey to provide feedback. During this time, the superintendent and board members will be present and will continue to speak directly with stakeholders. Superintendent Hendricks, I will turn it over now to you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Excited to share some facts about the school district tonight, a little bit of some recent data and some new initiatives that we have. But first, just a little bit of an overview. Pinellas County Schools is Florida's 8th largest district. Florida has county school districts, so 67 counties, 67 school districts, and some of the largest districts in the nation are in Florida as a result of that. And so we are the 8th largest in Florida, about the 30th largest in the country. 93,000 students pre-K through 12th grade. And we are the largest employer in Pinellas County with over 13,000 employees. We are getting close. Baycare is hiring more and more people, and I think in the region they have more employees, but we're still the largest here in Pinellas County. Our board and our district is committed to our vision of 100% student success and our mission of educating and preparing each child for college, career, and life. And as we build our schools and we think about the programs in our schools, we're looking for the opportunities of college, career, and life for all of our students. And our core values are something that, as superintendent, I have emphasized, and we emphasize those in a variety of ways, but grounding ourselves in the things that matter for us as employees, the things that matter for us as stakeholders in the school district, and you can see those core values listed. Last year, our board considered and approved a new district strategic plan. And it is a 3-year plan that has 16 major objectives, and you can see those objectives. And it does, these objectives are really the major focus areas that we want to devote our time, energy, and resources to improve our school district. The school district on any given day has literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different initiatives and things going on. But as we think about those, what are those that are most important that are going to drive student achievement and satisfaction in our school district? And they're organized around 6 priority areas, strategic priorities, and then you can see those 16. And as was mentioned by Dr. Brown previously, as we've been out in the community doing these events over the course of the first year and a half as I was superintendent, we garnered a lot of feedback about these priority areas. In fact, we may have listed literally over 100 priority areas that were in the previous district strategic plan, and we asked the public to give us feedback on which of those are most important, so that as we think about the things that we want to focus our budget areas on and the ideas for school improvement, we can look at those and really dive into those that are most important. And tonight I'll cover a few of these with some examples in just a few minutes. Wanted to share some data tonight that we recently shared with our board and received from the State Department of Education in late December. So this past school year was a little unique in that we did not receive school grades during the summer as we normally do. And the reason for that was we had new assessments last year. The Florida Assessment for Student Thinking, or FAST, partnered with new standards, the Benchmarks for Excellent Student Thinking, or the BEST standards. All were rolled out in the last 2 years, and with the new assessment last year, the state takes time to statistically make sure that the assessments are valid and then set cut scores through a process through the State Board of Education. Once they do that, they then release the state grades, which were given to us in December, and those grades are baseline scores. So schools receive their grades in December. There's no penalty for those grades as there would be on a regular summer grade. But one of the unique things about the grade release is that the state sets a benchmark of making sure that however many A schools there were last year or 2 years ago as it is now, there had to be the same number of A scores in the grades that were just released, and B, and C, and D, and F. And so as a result of that, the only way that you actually improve as a school to improve your school grade would be to do better than another school in the state. because at the end of the day, there was going to be sort of this equalized distribution of grades. And so with that, school districts were also the same way. So however many A's there were last year, there had to be that many A school districts this year, and so forth. So you can see Pinellas County Schools results across those 11 categories that typically are used for school grades. The learning gains portion of that was not included in those categories last year because there were not consistent tests over multiple years. So school grades were only based on proficiency or other categories such as acceleration and graduation rate. So you can see where Pinellas ranked, and we have the 10 largest school districts in the state, as well as some of our neighboring school districts. And although we are proud to have made some gains as relative to other school districts, we're not where we want to be yet. We want our district to be an A. That's actually one of those 16 objectives. The school district has been a B for many years. And this year we did improve our relative standing. We were up to 21st in the state. But that relative standing, as we improved, some others improved with us, some went down, so we gained a couple of spots. But you can see our overall performance across those large districts and across the state. Individually with school grades, you can see, and this is just listed those same districts alphabetically, and then how many A schools, B schools, C schools, D's and F's, incomplete grades, and then the percentage of A's and B's and percentage of D's and F's. So we are proud that 2/3 of our schools were A's and B's, and that is the second highest percentage in these sort of comparison school districts across the state. And the percentage of D's and F's went down for us as well. We had one F school. We no longer have that F school. We did have 4 D schools. And as a reminder, as I said just a minute ago, there's no sanctions for those schools. And in fact, some of those schools that earned a D had the highest proficiency rates they've had ever. But because learning gains were not included, those schools were still D's. The other thing that's important to note on here in the I column, those are incompletes. And what those represent are schools that did not test 95% of their students to earn a grade, or had some sort of an abnormality in the testing of that. There may be an investigation into the testing. We're proud to say that in Pinellas, every one of our schools earned a grade, and every school did all the things right. So there were no investigations into how schools tested or lost boxes of materials or things like that. And another reason why that's important is oftentimes schools with low grades are also those who don't test all their students. And so some of those I's will turn to D's and F's across the state, but certainly not here in Pinellas. And so just celebrating some of those schools that earned A's across our district, the ones that are starred or ones that are nearby here and in Area 1, this area of our school district. And the ones that have the little asterisk also improved their grade from the prior year. So we're pleased of those elementary schools across this area and across the district that earned A school grades. Here you can see our middle schools and our high schools that earned those grades as well. And we're also really proud, and we'll touch on this as one of the initiatives, in our middle schools. We had 10 middle schools increase their letter grade last year, 10 middle schools. And so go back to that, what I started with, the only way you can increase your school grade is if another state in the school actually declines. And so on aggregate, our middle schools did much, much better in the last school year. And we're really proud of that because we put a focus on that. And I'll touch a little bit more on that in just a moment. And so with that sort of data overview, I want to highlight some of the areas that we've put a big emphasis on. One is on student experience, and one is on high expectations. We want our students to have an experience in school that is second to none. And that should be in the classroom, that should be in athletics and extracurricular activities, that should be in transportation and food service and all those areas. And those high expectations should come in every part of our organization, from how our employees conduct themselves, to how our students behave, to how we even go out in the community and have these types of meetings. We should expect these things to happen in a high-functioning school district, and that's a focus of ours. So some of those highlights around the student experience and high expectations include student leadership summits. When I began as superintendent, it's something I wanted to do is to focus a little bit more on the student voice and student leadership. And we started the student leadership summits last year. And in fact, we just held them again last week. And so we convene every school in the school district in one location. This happened to be at USF St. Petersburg both years. And elementary schools have 4 student representatives that are student leaders at their school come. Middle schools had 9, high schools had 10 students come. And the focus is on developing leadership skills with students, listening to their input onto how to improve our school district, but then also giving them a task to go back and do to make our school district better. So last year when we did this, we asked our students to go back and hold a similar listen and learn session at their school, where they gathered input from students in their school to find things that they can improve upon. And as you can imagine, some of the elementary school students, the focus may have been on recess and what we do in the cafeteria and things like that. In high school, it was on things on we want our clubs to be more active. We want to change the way the student parking rules work or different things like that. But whatever it was at their school, they went back, they solicited that student voice, they had conversations with their principal and assistant principals, and then they worked to try to improve that. This year, the focus for students and their task when they left last week was to build activities that create school communities so that more students feel belonging at their school during the upcoming See Something, Say Something week. Most of you probably know that we partner with Sandy Hook Promise and some of the work that we do there on student mental health and to make sure our schools are safe. And so we engaged students in activities last week that they can take back and perhaps replicate at their school. But whatever that is, whether they're at our district's largest high school or our smallest elementary school, how can they make their school community a little bit safer physically, but also emotionally for the students there and have a greater connection? And the students really enjoyed it, and the feedback was tremendous. Another thing we focused on around that student experience is student field trips. And those field trips have been something that, of course, several years ago during the pandemic, we had to stop for obvious reasons. But we really relaunched last year. And you can see some examples there, and those have continued this year. We want our students to get out in the community, to our museums, to places that we have that are unique to Pinellas County. And whether that's the upcoming Firestone race, where we have several of our middle schools attending in St. Petersburg in a week or two. We sent about half of our middle school students to Tallahassee last year and met with our state representatives and senators to learn about civics in action and apply that while they were taking civics. So it's been a big emphasis. And this year, one of the new ones we have is actually an in-school field trip with a partnership with the Great Explorations Museum. They are visiting every one of our middle schools, and every 8th grader in the district will get to go into a mobile planetarium where they learn a little bit more about the standards that they're seeing in 8th grade physical science and connect that curriculum to what they're learning. I happened to visit Tarpon Springs Middle School about 2 weeks ago and participate in that. Laid on the gym floor and looked up in the planetarium. It's a blow-up planetarium with our students, and it was a great presentation, and the students love it. And those are the types of things we want to see our students continue to enjoy, because when they have something to look forward to in school, school's more fun, their attendance is higher, their performance is better, and so sometimes those field trips are part of that. Another part are academic competitions. We've really tried to push the idea of students really trying to achieve and earn these types of rewards academically. We've done that with some of the kind of traditional ones that you may be familiar with, but also some new ones. A picture in the right-hand corner there is our recent boys battle of the books. You're probably familiar with the regular battle of the books. We started a boys battle a couple of years ago. We now have 53 elementary schools that participated in the boys battle of the books 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we had 11 high schools. We started it in high school this year. And one of our the winning team for the high school was actually a combination team of Dunedin and Palm Harbor. They joined up and they won the Battle of the Books for boys in high school. But the text that they read, think like spiders, cars, those types of things that interest guys. So the high school one was called Guys Read, and it was a great turnout and success. Our board has also placed a great emphasis on early literacy, and you can see it's Objective 2 at the bottom of the screen in our district strategic plan. We have lots of data over 25 years of state testing in the state of Florida that shows us that students who don't read proficiently by 3rd grade are very unlikely to become proficient readers by the time they exit high school. And so we have to put a focus on how are we getting students to be proficient readers by 3rd grade. And the district has partnered with a number of individuals and organizations to help us with that. Some philanthropy organizations, the Helios Education Foundation and the Pinellas Education Foundation, which has connected the work and the science of reading and a lot of training in partnership with the University of Florida Lastinger Center to help our pre-K through 2nd grade teachers become experts in teaching reading. Not that they didn't learn some of that in college, but the science of reading has evolved, and the ways in which we teach reading need to evolve with that. And also understanding that that starts in pre-K. It's not something that you just switch on in 2nd grade, but there are a set of foundations and building blocks that need to happen. We're pleased with the work there. I mentioned the success in middle school, but part of that is a redesign of some of our middle school curriculum to make it more hands-on, especially in science. We've also done that in physical education. But this year, we also piloted some things in middle school to look at enrichment and other opportunities, some of which have been really, really successful, and others, that's why you pilot. And you learn from it, and you say, well, that wasn't the intended outcome, and let's try something different next year. But it's gone really, really well and yielded good results. Another one of those strategic priorities is Objective 3, and that is on preparing our students for the workforce and college success. And one of the commitments of the board last year, and we're now in our second year, is to have a college and career center at every one of our high schools with an employee who's there to help students connect them to those pieces. Our school counselors have large caseloads in our high schools, and while they do a great job with the work that they do, any and all help is appreciated, I know. And so the College and Career Center counselors help with some of the basic parts and then are able to pass those students off to our school counselors who have a little more of the expertise in some of those areas. Another area related to that in that college and career ready workforce is our career technical education programs, and in particular an expansion of career technical dual enrollment through our own Pinellas Technical Colleges. Pinellas County Schools owns and operates our two technical colleges in Clearwater and St. Petersburg, and we've pushed out those classes to students in their zoned high schools so that they can earn college credit through Pinellas Technical College and earn some of those industry certifications and workforce skills while they're at the college. Here locally, just in Palm Harbor, we have that in the medical magnet program. You see it in culinary there. We have it really almost in, well, we have it in every high school, sometimes 2 and 3 different pathways. And we're excited to continue that expansion. You can see a little bit more about some of those pathways at Pinellas Technical College, and we're really pleased that we continue to operate that in the community. So those are some of our strategies. What about some of the national recognitions and some of the great work that that's producing? Pinellas County Schools continues to be recognized as a place for school choice. We have over 85 magnet programs. We have 37 orchestra programs, almost entirely funded by our Pinellas County Schools referendum. We have 7 world languages. We operate VPK in almost every one of our schools, and in 26 of those schools, it's free. Every one of our elementary schools has robotics and STEM clubs, and so you can see some of those highlights, but the school choice opportunities in Pinellas where we provide transportation is not something that many large urban districts do, and we continue to be recognized for that. Some of those magnet programs were recently recognized by Magnet Schools of America as schools of distinction and schools of excellence, and you can see those on the screen. These are national awards and recognitions that schools have to apply for and then are adjudicated by a national panel. The highest award of schools is a School of Excellence, and we're pleased that Countryside High School and Douglas L. Jamerson Elementary were recently awarded those just last week. We also have some new magnet and career technical pathway programs in Area 1 here in North County, and one of those is the IB Middle Years program at Safety Harbor Middle School, which is joining with our Mid-County program at Largo and our South County at Sanderlin, and just recently a medical pathway here at Palm Harbor Middle School that helps to prepare students who likely will matriculate to Palm Harbor High School to generate interest in that program. We're also pleased at the performance of our students on national tests, such as the National Merit Scholarship Program, one of the more prestigious scholarship programs in the country. We had 24 National Merit semifinalists this last year, including several here in Area 1, and multiple students at Eastlake and Palm Harbor University High Schools. Similarly, on the career technical side, we've had students succeed at the national level. National Skills USA is a national competition. We had students at Dunedin High School and from Pinellas Technical College win national championships there. And locally, right around the corner from here, the students at Eliza Nelson Elementary went to the World Championships in the Odyssey of the Mind academic competition in the last calendar year. Most are probably familiar with our National Spelling Bee champion, Dev Shah, which also really created a greater interest in some of these competitions. We're really, really pleased that that's elevated these competitions in our district. And coming up this Saturday at Tropicana Field, the Rays are now the host for the regional Spelling Bee competition. There will be 28 of our students competing to go to Washington, D.C. at Tropicana Field this weekend. Those national recognitions include many in the arts, and we are pleased at the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. We had 15 national medals, 5 golds, 10 silvers. These students in the gold medals are invited to receive those awards at Carnegie Hall in New York City in the summer, and our referendum helps to fund those trips for our students and their teachers. And tomorrow night is the Regional Scholastic Art Awards reception for this year's competition. We have hundreds of students who will be recognized tomorrow night. This year's ceremony is at Gibbs High School, and those students are entered into the national competition, and we look forward to having more national winners this year. And included in those arts national prominence are a number of our marching bands. Many are probably familiar with the Tarpon Springs High School Leadership Conservatory for the Arts. The pictures there from Macy's Parade. Very proud of Seminole High School, who will be going to the Tournament of Roses Parade in Pasadena, California, coming up this next school year. And our referendum helps to fund some of these national opportunities for our students, not just in the arts, but in other academic areas as well. And so we continue to try to push these great stories of Pinellas County Schools and our objectives to try to achieve our strategic plan through a new district-wide newsletter that we began last year called Together PCS. You can see that on our website and sign up for it there, as well as through all of our social media channels, including one that I operate myself as superintendent. And as we go out and visit schools, just trying to highlight the good work that we see. I happened to visit Dunedin High School right around the corner today and saw students preparing for those regional Skills USA competitions in electrical wiring. I happened to see students competing and preparing for a Case Challenge Championship with Home Depot that's coming up. And I saw the Navy ROTC with a table full of awards. Mrs. Hine, you'd be happy, the Navy ROTC. And they were just trophies that they won this school year. They had about 22 trophies on that table, and they were preparing for their national inspection that's coming up this week. So that's a little bit about the school district, and I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Brown, who will talk to us and work us through the question and answers.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Hendrick, for that overview and for information on how our stakeholders can provide input on guiding our district. Now we will move on to our question and answer portion of the evening. There will be 45 minutes allotted for this portion on the agenda. We're going to get through as many questions as possible in our time frame. If you need an additional index card at this time or have already written your question, please raise your hand and a staff member will be by to collect your card or to provide you with another card. For those online, please type your question into the chat, and with the staff will read the questions submitted online aloud. I will read the questions aloud and will give the superintendent and board members an opportunity to respond. The board and superintendent are committed to a standard of civility and decorum in conducting our community meetings. This includes refraining from clapping or making audible noises during or after a speaker or staff member comments. We appreciate you in assisting us in maintaining a civil and constructive environment. It is everyone's responsibility to ensure decorum, respect, and civility for all who are present. Lastly, please note that this meeting and all comments will be broadcast live on the internet and the video will be publicly archived. Members of the public may always communicate with the school board or the superintendent through their email addresses, board@pcsb.org or super@pcsb.org. And now for our first question. Thank you. The first question is, what do you think about cell phone use by middle schoolers in class? Is this an equity issue?
So when I was running in 2021, this was brought up in a forum that I participated in, and I said that I thought that especially our elementary and middle schoolers were distracted by their cell phones in class. I'm a teacher as well, and so I've seen it. I've taught middle school and high school. And I see what a distraction it has become for our students, and I think it's a big concern. But back then in 2021, I kind of remember there was like an audible chuckle in the room when I brought it up, and now it's something that we are really seriously considering and talking about as a district, and I think that it's not just in our district, it's in the state and in our country. You know, our kids need to be engaged in the classroom, they need to be paying attention, and they need to be learning. And when they have these cell phones that are taking that away, you know, that engagement with their teachers and the conversation and the content, it's not good. And I really think that it is a problem, and I would like to see us do something different than what we're currently doing. I would like to, allow our students to have their cell phone at school. I have a middle schooler as well. I do want my daughter to have access to her phone so that after school she can tell me, oh, I have practice today, or, whatever she needs to communicate to me after school. So maybe we put them in the locker, or we make sure they're off and in their backpacks and not out on their desks. But it is a serious problem, and I think it's something that we really need to do our due diligence to address.
I agree with what Mrs. Meyer said. I would just maybe add, one of the things you've maybe heard me say is, when I was growing up, my mom was worried about Madonna. And when she was growing up, her mom was worried about Elvis. And I think most parents of young kids today would give our right arm to just have a radio knob to turn off. But that's not the case, right? We're managing all of this access out there. And so our responsibility as a school district is to look at that 14% of time that our students are in school when it comes to a given year. And so what are our policies and the way that we manage that access when it comes to school? And it is definitely something that we're talking about. I know the question was specific to middle school. I have a 7th grader, a middle schooler, and last night he was working on his algebra homework, and he had to figure out the growth factor for a exponential equation. And yes, I studied aerospace engineering and took a lot of math, but I do not remember how to do that. And anyway, it's amazing that you are able to quickly search growth factor exponential equation and get 10 different 3-minute videos of teachers telling you how to do that. That is amazing, right? So there are incredible resources out there with technology. When it comes to the time that they are in the classroom, the teacher, you really want the teacher to be engaging them, teaching them, and not on those devices. And so I agree that I think in that middle school time frame, they should be off and put away unless they are brought out for appropriate use, for hey, we're going to do this, Quizlet together. We're all going to hop on and we're going to do something interesting. Or, as we know, technology is changing constantly, and there is some amazing application. And so how do we do both? How do we harness that incredible application that is available out there, but also not have it be, I do think it is the single greatest distraction to learning during the the school day. So being able to balance both those things.
And I would just like to add, I agree with both of my fellow board members. A lot of our middle schools in this county have a policy. You can have a cell phone, but when you come onto the campus, you turn it off and it goes in your backpack. And you cannot bring it out again unless the teacher is using it for a lesson with those QR codes. That's big now in the middle schools. Mr. Hendrick and I got to see it at Osceola. And they don't come out until they are off the campus. It is difficult because middle school kids just want to push as far, they're learning. They got to see how far they can go. But the middle schools, they vote as a faculty that they don't want them out during school because it is a distraction. And it's hard enough with middle schoolers. One minute they're on task, the next minute they're over with their friends, and you're trying to keep all 30 kids engaged, and it's difficult. So there's a time and a place for cell phones. I understand as a parent, you want to, know where your child is, and if there is an incident where you know that the school might be in a lockdown, you have it, you want to reach your child. But that cell phone going off could hurt your child if the predator is in the building. So again, I think it is good monitoring by our administrators and our teachers. Every faculty, the administrators talk to them and they decide what they feel is best for their students. And I think it's a policy that's working.
The only thing I just want to add real quick is that we provide laptops to every one of our students from first grade to 12th grade. And for the most part, 4th grade and up, we issue them and students bring them to and from school. So we've provided that technology for teachers to have that ability, and so the cell phone isn't needed for any of those things. We can use our computers.
Next question, what can be done about student behavior in middle school and high school so classes aren't disrupted as much?
That's a great question. I've been to 58 of our schools, and when I visit them, I always ask the principals and teachers and a variety of people, what's the number one issue you're facing? Or the other night when I was leaving the school district kind of late, and I bump into a math teacher in the parking lot, and I say, what can I do for you? And that particular math teacher did bring up to me, he said, I'm having trouble in some of my classes because, one or two students might cause difficulty and it keeps me from being able to teach the other students. And so talking about that, it is a real issue. It is not an issue in every single classroom. It's not an issue every single day, but it is something that we have to make sure our teachers have tools that they can employ to help be able to keep teaching the rest of that class. And so what happens if a student is acting up in class, they can be sent out of the classroom to a place called IC, and then they can be sent back to the classroom. And so I know I've been driving Dr. Hines a little bit crazy, who's our area superintendent, over this part of our code of conduct, trying to really understand how this process works and what's available to people. And you can, even at a certain point, if there's enough disruption, you can reassign a student from the school that they're in. So we do have measures in place and ways that we can deal with it. The best thing, obviously, is that teacher in their classroom being able to keep everybody engaged. But we need everyone's help. We need the community's help. We need the family's help. We need everyone to be part of this. And I hear more and more people talk about it, and I appreciate the awareness. But I very much would like for our teachers to have the opportunity when a student is disruptive to have them leave the classroom and have that be able to be addressed so that they continue focusing on their teaching.
I can say that with student discipline, it starts at the beginning of the school year. I got to know every single parent that I had their students. And I called the parents, and at the beginning of the year, I explained what the behavior rules were. When a child breaks the rule once, and I know this is happening at a lot of middle schools, I've been visiting our middle schools and watching, they're spoken to. They're given a reminder. Sometimes it's just a tap on the shoulder and pointing to the discipline chart. But the next step is phone calls home. Teachers need to be talking to parents. Teachers need to be asking parents, do you have a way of handling your child? Can you give me some suggestions? Parents can come in and shadow their children. I have seen several parents this past week sitting in a classroom because the teacher has asked for the parent to come in. We do have ISS, but remember, once a teacher sends a child out, you are saying you no longer can handle the behavior. And that message is very loud to students. And then they know, okay, I know where her weakness or his weakness is. And then, they're kids, they're going to try. But the big thing is getting parents involved, talking to parents, what works at home, parents coming in and shadowing. There are many things that can be done before writing a referral. And yes, there are some kids that you have to send out. They're interrupting the learning of others. And no one child has the right to interrupt the learning of others. But you also have to make sure as a teacher that there are no other circumstances, that they don't have an IEP or a 504 that gives specific directions. But I hear teachers. I'm always visiting schools. I go to evening groups with teachers from the North County, Mid County, South County, and they're telling me all the time. And then, of course, I say to them, have you done this? Have you done this? You as a teacher and they have so much on their plate. It's unbelievable, but they have to take that extra step to get the parent involved. And once you get the parent involved, you know, we pray it works, but sometimes it doesn't, and then we do have to take further steps. But the goal is to keep the child in the classroom so they have teacher instruction. That's how our children are going to be successful.
Just add a couple of quick things. When I interviewed to be superintendent, I shared in my interview with board members that I felt like we needed a greater emphasis and focus on behavior. And when I became superintendent, I asked them to rededicate some resources at the district level to better support behavior, so that when schools were having a challenge with a student, we could have immediate support to come. And we've overwhelmingly seen that positively received, that someone will come, someone will either work with an individual student or in a situation, whether it's school-wide or if it's in one classroom. At the end of the day, to answer the question, what can you do? You have to be firm, fair, and consistent. You have to consistently enforce the rules. You have to consistently do it every single day in every single classroom. And as superintendent, I've shared that with our principals very clearly. You don't have to be a screamer. You don't have to be a yeller. You can be as positive as you want to be, but you do need to be firm. You do need to be fair, and you do need to do it every day. And to get back to what the board members said about, you know, great teachers solve most of these problems. And, you know, for a couple of years there with a lot of substitutes and a lot of vacancies, it's hard to run school-wide discipline when half the faculty's out or sick, or there's substitutes, or there's, you know, no bus drivers and kids are coming in whenever. We're past that. We don't have those situations anymore. So it's on us to be firm, fair, and consistent. And we've gotten better, and our survey results have shown that, but I think it's something that in schools it's always going to be an area for focus.
Next question. Should we consider reassigning the PCS police to report directly to Pinellas County Sheriff's Office?
Yeah, I can touch on that. There's, you know, different models. Some school districts have their own police department, others don't. I think that there's positives and negatives in both. We have an excellent relationship with our sheriff. I meet personally with Sheriff Gualtieri 4 times on a schedule, and then we talk whenever as needed. One of the things that's a little bit unique about Pinellas County versus others is we have 24 municipalities. You know, Hillsborough County has 2, right? Miami-Dade has a handful. So, you know, Tarpon Springs Police, for example, loves the fact that their police are in their schools. In fact, they don't even have school safety officers in the elementary school. They assign a school resource officer, and that's what they like in their community. City of St. Petersburg, different things. We have a police and have had a police officer. You know, we have about 30 officers that serve. Some serve our schools, some of our more difficult schools, like our behavior centers and our reassignment, where some of the cities say, we'll take the regular high school, but we don't want the reassignment school. And then they also are able to do things that are a little bit more unique and support our schools in different ways. So I don't know that it's a need to move them, but I think that, you know, both models will work as long as the communication between agencies is kept up.
Next question. Which is more important, student and school grades or actual student individual learning, retention, and progress?
I guess I'll go first. As a teacher, I would say that it's the learning, it's the engagement. You know, all children are different. Not all children are going to get an A in algebra, and that's okay. We want our kids to succeed in the areas that they've been given gifts. We want our kids to learn things outside of their gifts, of course, because they have to graduate, and so we sometimes have to learn things that, you know, we're not that great at. I'll use math as an example. I struggled in math all of my time as a student here in Pinellas County, but I was able to get a C and graduate in math. But the reality is that all of our children are unique, they're all different, and they're all going to have different strengths and weaknesses. And at the end of the day, it's about that student experience. It's not just about getting that A or, you know, acing that test. We want our students to have a wonderful experience here in Pinellas County. I think you can see that by all of the wonderful programs that Mr. Hendrick highlighted in our opening. And I'm really excited about what we are offering our students. I remember I was a student here in Pinellas County many moons ago, and just to see now as a board member where we've come from where we've been is really inspiring, and it's really exciting. And it's all about the experience, and that's what we as board members, I think, have all expressed, that's our commitment to our students and to our teachers, and I think you can see that in our district's strategic plan.
It's definitely student engagement. I am so excited. I am on a new tour in my district. It's called the Show Off Tour. And teachers are just, they get so excited. It's not a regular evaluation. It's not evaluation at all. It's them showing off new things that they've tried and they're successful with. At Curlew Creek, the 5th grade team is using a book. They did a book study over the summer, and now they're engaging in it. Like Miss Myers, math was not my thing. And I remember 5th grade math, and it was like, oh God, I don't want to go to that class. She was teacher of the year for Curlew. She engages them from the minute they walk in the door. They have a math problem, like right now they're still working on multiplication, and a kid will get a card, 9 times 7 is 63. Okay, go to table 63. All the students do it. The groups of students changes every day. And then she teaches, the concept, and then they go and they work in a team. And it is wonderful because a lot of kids, they're nervous, they'll get the wrong answer and somebody will tease them. I was blown away because the kids that were afraid of math or slower in math were working with their peers, and when they got it, it was like, oh, I got it. And they were all high-fiving each other, and they were so excited. Then after everybody does the problems, they go back to their seat, and they get a piece of paper. And then they get to pick their color, and you paint the paper, and the answers show up. And it was amazing when you saw the kids. Oh, we got that one right. And poor Johnny, who struggled. Hey, everybody, look, Johnny got it right. No child is afraid in that environment, and they're so engaged there aren't behavior problems because they want to participate. Student engagement is so important. It would solve a lot of discipline. You can't have downtime for a child to start, the mind wandering. Keep them engaged, keep it fun, keep it moving, because they're used to video and games on their phones. You got to keep them engaged or we've lost them.
I think I will add one thing. I'm sorry. So I just want to make sure the question was about student achievement versus school grades, right? Individuals, yeah. So over the years, I've said a lot about school grades, but it doesn't mean you all have necessarily heard it. When my older son was 3 or 4 years old, and we'd drive every day and we'd pass our local elementary school that no one I knew went to or even talked about. It wasn't on the list of schools where if you get accepted to these lottery schools, okay. And I just thought, well, why not? Why don't we go there? Because I grew up going to school here as well, and you went to your school. So I learned that it was a Title I letter grade D school. Well, most people would think, oh, well, it's a D. I'm not going to send my child there. But I saw open house on the sign one day, and I thought, I'm going to go to the open house and see what's going on here. It's my school. It's right there. I visited school. It was amazing. I met the principal. Her eyes were shining. The teachers were alive to the world and happy. And I thought, well, why is it a D? And so then I learned a lot about what that school grade is. And I definitely feel that if you're a parent looking at schools, you cannot count on that grade alone to assess a school. You have got to put your feet on the ground. You've got to make eye contact and look and ask questions and feel it. It turns out that school had a higher level of poverty and a higher level of minority students, but they're thriving students, thriving teachers. And so I would say that that's my one side to say that it's not all about the school grade at all. I will also say that I've had people who are big pro school grade people tell me one thing that I do think is good, which is that part of that school grade calculation is what they call the L25, the lower quartile. And is that lower quartile improving? And it is a cell that matters. And so if it matters to your school to improve their school grade, if they want a higher school grade, they better focus on that L25. And when I was in the Navy, you definitely heard people use the phrase, you leave no man behind. And that is exactly what that does. And so that is one thing, if I were to say there's one positive to the school grade, it's that.
Thank you. My son is in a middle school at DePaul School of Dyslexia. There are no schools for high school students in Pinellas County. Is there any programs in place to help these dyslexic students for high school?
So about 7 years ago, when I became the chief academic officer, nobody said the word dyslexia. It was like a, don't say it, right? It doesn't exist. Just don't pretend it doesn't happen. Because people were just afraid of it or didn't know it. And even the state didn't really recognize it as a formal disability or something that needed support. We created a position at the district office, or really repurposed it, didn't create it, but repurposed a position to have someone just help schools, help teachers who have students with dyslexia. So train teachers on how to work with students with dyslexia. From there, we opened Eliza Nelson with the Center for Literacy Innovation to support students with dyslexia characteristics. We then did the same thing in the South County, and we've progressed up with those students into middle school to support them. In fact, Palm Harbor Middle School has support for that for students with dyslexia who went to Eliza Nelson and then come up. The whole idea with that is a fading plan, so that when students get to high school, they're able to read and able to use those resources. But we do have supports in high schools. We don't have a program for that. We don't have a plan to create a one program just for students with dyslexia, but we still have the training, we still have the support. And when we have a parent who says, my child needs that level of support, we have our person go out and support that school or the unique needs of that student. And of course, our goal is to get them through that prior to getting to high school.
Next question. Is there any plan for looking at rezoning specifically at for the Dunedin community? 75% of Dunedin kids do not attend Dunedin Middle School due to being zoned to Palm Harbor Middle. In elementary and in the community, the kids are exposed to the Scottish arts, but then zoned elsewhere.
So we've not brought any rezoning to our school board in probably 10 years, and we don't have any current plans to rezone. One of the challenges with rezoning is that people feel like there's winners and losers in that, and people buy their homes, and this is where it was when I got there, and now you're changing it on me. What we do have is wide school choice, and we allow for folks to choose middle schools or high schools. Last year, we allowed every single school choice application into all of our elementary, middle, and high schools that had seats, so not magnet schools, because there's a different process for that. And then eventually there were a few schools that got full, but for the most part, if you go through the process and choose a school early, you'll get that choice. But right now there's no plans for rezoning.
Next question. I appreciate the effort to make bus transportation more reliable and efficient this year. Any more thought to bus stops up to 2 miles from homes, requiring parents pick up and drop off midday for working parents? Will this deter families with 2 working parents to apply for fundamental and magnet programs?
So I can maybe go first and the board can chime in. We don't provide transportation to fundamental schools except for Osceola Fundamental High School, and even still you have to get pretty far for that. We do have it at one middle school in South County, but it has another magnet there, which is why it also has a transportation. We got sort of lost in our ways on magnet transportation over the years. And in our effort to kind of say yes to everybody who says, can I have a stop here? Can I have a stop here? Can I have a stop here? That was part of the reason that we created this problem we had in transportation. We are thrilled that we now actually have more drivers than routes. So every day we start with a surplus of drivers, and people call in sick and then we fill those holes. But part of that was becoming more efficient in our arterial stops. But when parents choose to send their child to a magnet, you are also understanding you're not going to have a neighborhood stop. There are arterial stops. At the start of the year, in some cases, we added arterial stops, and as we continue to get better with transportation, we may add some, but there's still going to be the idea that you are going to have to get your child to the arterial stop. and they were never designed to be neighborhood stops that you could walk to the same way you would walk to your neighborhood stop. So that's a little bit of the give and the take on that. We recognize that that's a challenge for parents who don't have transportation, working parents, but we also do try to troubleshoot and help those families, or maybe there's some carpools or other things that we can also do. But that is dictated by our board policy, and our first obligation is to get kids to school on time and home at a reasonable time, and we were not doing that over a couple of years, and we are doing that now. And so we've met that, and can we add from there? We can, but we're not going to do it at the expense of getting kids to school on time. The other piece is we receive from the state about $14 million in transportation funding, and that funding is only for zoned stops. We spend about $27 million in transportation. And so every time you say, can we add a stop, add a stop, add a stop, those are funds that we're taking from another part of the school district in order to do that. And so we also have to be fiscally responsible in this equation.
And the other thing we did about 6 years ago with Dr. Grego, there was magnet programs like Mr. Ford's music program up there. So we started, as a board, we started talking, and Dr. Grego and the board decided we need to replicate these magnets. So there's a North County magnet, a Middle, and a South County. And that has given parents an opportunity to still have the magnet, but closer to home. And it has helped. And it's, you know, the 2-mile rule, that's part of our system. And we have to make a decision just how far, because if it's 2 miles and you go 2.1, then somebody that lives 2.2 is going to complain. So, you know, this year has been phenomenal. I am just so thrilled with our busing. Stephanie Woodford, our deputy superintendent, Mr. Hendrick, put her in charge, and she has redone everything, and things are going 100% better.
The next two questions have to deal with middle school master schedule. So one, will you bring back 7 periods to the pilot middle schools that were used and ensure electives are included, specifically referring to Tarpon Springs, Tarpon Middle? And also, please explain the reasons for middle schools losing an elective and switching to 6 periods.
So as I mentioned earlier, the middle school pilot, we tried a number of things, and one of those at some of the schools, we had 6 pilot schools this year, was to add an enrichment period and take away a full period. And the design in the enrichment was to give students the opportunity to pursue interests that maybe aren't a full class, or maybe they are, but they're more passion-based things. And so it's gone well at many schools, but when you reduce from 6 to 7 in terms of your traditional periods, you're going to have a decrease in some of the electives. So the answer to the question is yes, we are adding 7 at every single middle school next year. That's a final decision. It's done. It's over. You don't have to ask us about it anymore. And so that's that. Schools will also try to work in enrichment, and that's been very successful. And, you know, there's been conversations, I've had lots with folks in the arts community just about numbers, but what's been lost in that a little bit, I've had conversations with teachers who've said, you know what, I've been able to pull my entire jazz band together, whereas I normally wouldn't have that, but now I get them all in the enrichment period, and I have 42 kids in there, which I would never have the opportunity to do before, and that's been really good. I heard an art teacher at a school I went to said, I have this enrichment art club of 40 students, and they're the best behaved, most motivated art students I've ever had because they want to be there, and this is what they chose. So there's been some good things there too, but when you take away a class, you do decrease electives. But a lot of good things in the pilot. That's one we're adding back, is 7 for every single school. There'll be some other things like teaming and other things we're keeping, but that's the answer.
I think I might highlight that teaming part. When I visited Tarpon Middle in the fall, well, the first thing I noticed was that their principal and I went to high school together, which I wasn't aware of. Certainly hadn't seen him in 30 years or so, but so that was fun. But when I visited the teachers in the classroom that they use for their teaming time, and they showed me all the different charts, and I asked them, what do you think? What do you think how this new pilot is going? The thing that they valued the most was that teaming piece where they had time together to look at every single student name. name, every single one, and talk about how they were doing and who needed what and how they could fill in. And so I think the fact that we're keeping that piece and then while adding back in the electives is excellent, and I'm very happy. And that's why you pilot things. That's why we didn't do every single middle school. We're going to do this. We piloted it at a handful of middle schools. We've had some lessons. We're making a change, but we're keeping the things that works really well. I'm really happy with it.
The next is a book question. Do you think books referencing fisting should be age restricted in Pinellas County Schools?
I think that K-12 students should have access to high-quality, age-appropriate literature that allows for creating a love of learning for their lifetime. And I believe that their teachers and our library and media specialists who are certified and licensed and trained in these kinds of things are making exceptional choices. If something comes into our schools that shouldn't be there, then we have a process for that to be highlighted, identified, and removed. And our board has spent a lot of time on that over the last couple of years, and I really value where we have landed when it comes to that policy and procedures to make sure that we have that access to high quality, age appropriate literature that creates a love of learning for our students.
So I just want to echo that sentiment, and I will say a resounding no to the answer to the question that should not be in our schools. Our literature that our kids have at their disposal needs to be educational. It needs to have value for their education, the reason that they are there in our schools, to learn reading, writing, math, science, history. And we also have to realize that we have state laws here in Florida that we have to also follow. Like Mrs. Hine mentioned, we worked together in collaboration. We came up with a policy that all of us agreed on. Were there some areas of the policy that, I wasn't happy with? Yes. I'm sure everybody can say that, but, that's the job of the board. It is to work together to come up with a policy that works. We are seeing that policy at work now with collaboration with parents, stakeholders in the community, people in that individual school, library media specialists, work as a committee and as a team to decide whether books are age appropriate or not. And those decisions are then made. Do I agree with every decision that's been made so far? No, I don't. But this is the policy that we drafted as a board, and I do think it's working. But is it perfect? No. But this is the situation that we're in. But to answer the question, no, I do not think we should have explicit sexual content on the shelves in our schools. Period, end of story. We're talking about children. We're talking about minors. I've been very clear about that from day one, and I will continue to advocate for those materials to not be on our shelves in our schools.
I can tell you it's been at least 10 years because I was teaching. We have had a policy in Pinellas County Schools where each parent makes the choice for their children. If a teacher is going to use a book, this is usually in high school or middle school, that could be considered not liked by all families. The teacher has to go to their principal. They have to show them the lesson plans and how they will handle any situation that comes up. And then, as a parent, a letter is sent home, and you, as a parent of your child, can agree to let the child read the book, or you can say, no, I want an alternative decision, an alternative book given to my child. It has worked very successfully, and the state of Florida has looked at us as one of the leading counties of this policy that we've had in place for at least 10 years. We are starting to, our media specialists in this county are so educated. They are going through books and making sure they're grade appropriate. But every parent has the right to make the decision that your child will read that book or not read that book. We also, this year, Mr. Hendrick added in our beginning school year paperwork, a parent can say, I don't want books of certain nature to be checked out to my child, or I don't want my child checking out books to the library, and it flashes. So a media specialist sees right away, can't let them go here or go there, and they're then told, no, we need a parent permission. And to have the state look at us and say, wow, Pinellas County has been doing it right, that's a big deal. And it's been at least 10 years, it might even be longer. I know I was teaching when it started.
Thank you. AP Psychology is back on the course selection sheet for the 24-25 school year after being replaced by ACE Psychology last year due to the loss from Tallahassee. Is the return AP Psychology a watered-down version? And if so, has the College Board commented on whether it will count as a college credit through the AP test process?
So we made the decision to go to ACE because of the political part of that, and we didn't want to jump back and forth. Our teachers in high school were fantastic. I met with them personally. We'll make the decision after we let them go through the year. We know that our students will get college credit for the course they're taking this year, and we'll ensure that in future years. There have been some school districts that just stuck with AP Psychology, and we'll see how that lands. But we want to advantage our students and not make our teachers have to jump back and forth.
Next question. What alternatives exist to online instruction and testing if two students are not excelling? Do the distractions of electronics present and add to screen time that studies show is detrimental to brain development, especially for students who have ADD or ADHD and meds or exceed in intelligence and ability? So what alternatives exist to online instruction for testing?
So I think if I understand the question correctly, the state is pretty clear in that you have to take the assessments that they offer and they have to be online, or the couple that are left on paper, 5th grade, 8th grade science. Very few accommodations are allowed for students to take paper-based tests, and those are almost always visual impairment and things like that. Everything else has to be done, so that's not a local decision. So the answer is there's really no other options when it comes to taking those assessments. Just kind of related to that, and the board has been very clear with me about this, and we've been very clear. Although we love the fact that we're a one-to-one district, we do not want our students on the computers in class in lieu of a teacher. We want our teachers, who are the best educators of our children, teaching our students. The computers are there to supplement that, to research, to offer small group instruction while a teacher has a small group. We never want to see, just open your computer and everybody do this thing online. So although we're proud that we have the one-to-one, and we think it's great to extend the school day and offer from the opportunity of every student has this at home, and we offer a Wi-Fi device as well, so there's no one is without the internet at home or without the computer at home, and we think that that's great. We want our teachers teaching our kids and not putting them on the computer.
And I have to say, visiting 5th grades all across the north part of the county, right now the teachers are starting to prepare. What's more important is teaching students to use proper quotations and capital letters. They do everything first on paper, and then they go back and they try to do it on the computer, and the teacher is introducing the computer and showing them how not to get so nervous and freeze. And it's really wonderful watching the kids. It's amazing how quickly they catch on. Now, for some kids, it's difficult, and I can see it being difficult for certain children with special needs. They have to process, think it, and then type it. But, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to kick you. They have accommodations, extra time, smaller group instruction, and hopefully that's going to eliminate some of the problems when they're testing, because they'll be in a smaller group, less distractions. But I have to tell you, the teachers, how they're handling this is unbelievably incredible. They're calm. They're a little nervous themselves, but they're not showing it to the kids.
With the expansion of the medical and IB programs at the middle schools, will there be more students accepted into these programs in the high school?
So right now, IB-wise and medical magnet-wise, we think we're at a good place, but if the demand is there in applications, we will. We always look at our application programs and we up the numbers when we see that there's a big demand for that. As Mrs. Long mentioned, we may add another program, just like we did when we added the IB program at Largo High School, because the demand was just too great at Palm Harbor and at St. Pete. So we look at that, we adjust those, and sometimes that's internally in a school. The public may not even see that. We may normally take in 140 students, but we think we have, we have the ability, we have the space to take in 160 this year, so we do those things, and we're in the process of that right now with our district application program. So the answer is yes, if we see the demand and we think we can meet it.
The next question is directed to Ms. Hine. It says, did you skip the last school board meeting to be in Tallahassee for your own specific interest? Yes.
No, is the answer to that question. No, I was on work. Every now and then a board member might miss a school board meeting, whether it's because they don't feel well or their child has a competition somewhere or they're on family travel. But I missed the most recent board meeting. I was in Tallahassee. I'm a member of the St. Pete Chamber of Commerce Future of Work Task Force. I attend their meetings regularly, trying to look at how we can dovetail industry with the offerings we have in our schools. This has been a strong interest of mine. I've met with the head of economic development for the county. I've met with a number of different industries to try to find out what is it you need. What are our fastest growing industries in Pinellas County? Where are those workforce demands going to be over the next decade? Not just tomorrow, not just today, not just tomorrow, but how are we setting up our students for opportunities here in this county to meet those demands in the future? So this was an opportunity where the St. Pete Chamber Future of Work Task Force, the Amplify Clearwater, which is their chamber in Clearwater, and then also the Beaches Chambers of Commerce. All three chambers of commerce had set up a trip to Tallahassee, which I was invited on, and we met with the Florida Chamber of Commerce, and we got all kinds of information and questions. I was so glad I was there. I was sorry to miss the meeting. Of course, I've watched it, but it's still always sorry to miss. But it was a great use of time, and I look forward to sharing with the board some different things I took away. I was glad I was able to answer a lot of questions, because what's interesting is the people who participate in our chambers of commerce tend to be leaders of businesses, right? And so they have all kinds of ideas, and they say, well, our schools should this, our schools should that. And here I am, a school board member. I was able to say, so this is what we are doing in Pinellas County Schools. And, one of the big things that they were pushing is there's this new application called Zello, and the Florida Chamber of Commerce, this is like, they think this is the greatest thing, and I'm sure it is. But I was able to, and everyone said, we have to do Zello, and I was able to say, we are doing Zello. So there were a lot of things I was able to answer real time and collaborate on real time. And there were some great ideas and information. So, a number of the things that they're talking about is looking at our workforce in the state as kind of supply chain management, right? Just kind of looking at it the same way. And so what are the growing industries? What do we need to provide people for? And then also, we're losing some of our workforce here. The head of the state chamber walked into the meeting at one point and he said, the number one issue facing the workforce in Florida is childcare. I thought, well, that's interesting. He said, people cannot afford, they can't find it, and they can't afford it. And especially in Pinellas County, with our cost of living, what's happened with the cost of living here in Pinellas County, and this is a retention issue when it comes to our teachers and our employees. So yes, I'm finding out as much as I can on how we fit into that ecosystem and how we're dovetailing industry and then learning about retention and workforce. So yes, I think it was a great use of time. I was very sorry to miss the meeting, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the district working on any type of unified stance or policy regarding the use of AI tools to do schoolwork?
We are, and you can make a policy today, and next week the technology changes. So we've actually enlisted students to help us. So one of the things that we brought to the district a couple of years ago was a partnership with Junior Achievement called 3DE. We have it now in 4 of our high schools, and one of the challenges that they do is they meet with businesses and they give businesses advice to try to solve a problem that the business is trying to solve. And they go through the entire exploratory consultancy process like they would if they hired out Arthur Andersen or one of these, KPMG, one of these consultant companies, and then the students literally produce their answers. And they compete with others, and they compete nationally to try to win these competitions. I mentioned Dunedin High School is doing a Home Depot one next week. So we are actually one of those businesses, and we've tasked the students at St. Petersburg High School with giving us advice on what we should do with AI. Should we create policy? Should we create procedures? Should we train our teachers better? Should we train our students? And so in March, I believe it is, the board is invited, and I'll be there to hear their results, and then we will, like all the other businesses that we've had that have participated in this consultancy process, choose a winner and sort of adopt that advice. In terms of just some other things we've done, obviously we equip our teachers with a number of resources to help with that. So Turnitin.com and some of those things to just help with cheating and plagiarism that we've had for a little while. But there's also, there's good tools in there that help students and actually help them solve problems. You talk about math problems and things like that. So, when it comes down to assessments, obviously you can't use those things. We want to see what's in your brain. But we are not naive to it, but we also don't think that you're going to solve it just because the school board makes a policy. It'll change tomorrow with the next technology and the next one. So, but that's where we are. We're excited to see what the students come up with.
I just wanted to make one comment about AI. Many of you might know this. I'm also a professor at Hillsborough Community College, and this is a big issue when I have students turning in research papers and I'm looking back through all of their work that they've written earlier in the semester, and now I'm looking at this research paper and it sounds like somebody who's got a doctorate in history has written it. So I think it really just comes down to, as an educator, I think it really comes down to knowing your students and engaging with them to the point that what their writing abilities are, and whether or not they wrote this or not. Now, the technology hasn't caught up with those kind of devices yet, where we can identify it like we can with Turnitin, which is obviously a plagiarism checker that I use both in teaching high school and as a professor. I think we'll get there, but again, I really think it comes down to, here in Pinellas County, our teachers knowing their students, knowing their ability, and being able to identify if there's a major difference in what they're turning in, then it's probably something that was AI generated.
Thank you. The next question, students deal with finding out who they are, including their gender identity. Some students get bullied or don't participate in things because of it, including gym. If a kid is transgender in a locker room, do they use the handicapped bathroom as an example? How can you make these students feel welcome?
So we work with students and their families on any of these situations, including single-use restrooms, and we have a guide to help support schools. So we talk about inclusive spaces, and we work with schools for all students, not just students around gender identity, but anything. We want our students to be safe and comfortable in our schools as places of learning. So we do have a support guide that supports students with there, but so far we just work individually with families, and we make the best decision we can to support the student, and then we move forward.
What is the status of the updated start times for schools?
So by 2026, we have to do that, and the first thing we needed to do was solve our transportation problem, because that would put a wrench in a lot of things. So we've done most of that. We shared an update with the board, I think, at our January workshop related to where that is. The challenge in Pinellas, going back to our magnet transportation, the reason high schools are first is because they have the longest runs. So we start picking students up 5:15 in the morning, 5:30 if they're going from St. Petersburg to Tarpon or vice versa. You can do that when it's the first run of the day. You can't do that if it's the middle run, right? The other things end up being 2 hours apart. So we're going to have to make some choices there in terms of how we support transportation, but we've innovated this year, and we've partnered some schools together. So we've partnered Eastlake High School and Eastlake Middle School, and it's worked. We've partnered Bay Point Middle School and Lakewood High School, and it's worked. So we have to continue those things. We will follow the law, obviously, But we've had these conversations. I think Mrs. Hine was on a school start time task force 10 years ago or something. And the solutions are not just, just flip the times, right? Because you have transportation routes, you have other things. So we'll get there, but right now we're still in the let's become as efficient as possible. And in this next year, we will run some models and see what's possible, and then we'll go from there. And if the law stays the same, we will absolutely be in compliance.
And we have not a question, but a comment. My high school student participated in the Student Leadership Summit last week and really enjoyed it. Thank you. So we want to thank...
We can end on that one, Dr.
We can end on that one. We end on a happy note. So thank you so much, Superintendent Hendrick and board members, Mrs. Hine, Ms. Myers, and Ms. Long, for being here tonight and answering these questions. Yes, ma'am.
I'm so sorry. I just want to say one thing. I realized I didn't finish the story about that D school and going to the open house. My children went to school there. I sent my children to a D-graded school. I don't think it's a D anymore. I'm not concerned about it because it's a great school with amazing teachers. What I am concerned about is, do those teachers have what they need to come alive in their classrooms and support all of those students, whichever quartile that they're in. So I just wanted to make clear that, yes, my children attend that school.
Thank you. And so once again, thank you to the board and to Superintendent Hendricks for being here tonight, taking time out to answer the questions of our stakeholders. Now I'm going to turn it back over to the Superintendent Hendrick to give us an overview on how everyone here tonight give direct input and inform the board on the district inform the board and district leadership. Superintendent Hendrick.
Thanks, and I'm going to make it quick because we went over our Q&A time, but we were close enough. We just wanted to answer all the questions. So we've been asking a lot about cell phone use. We're going to be presenting to the board in March at a workshop and a code of conduct update. So just want to go through real quick where we are with that and ask for your feedback and input. So the state law is really clear. Students can have cell phones for emergency purposes on campus, but they may not use it during instructional time unless directed by a teacher. So the law protects teachers to have the right to either allow or not allow students to use them in their room. The conversation that our board is having and we're having with the community is around what's appropriate and at what levels. So we know students are going to have them. We know they can use them for emergency purposes, but otherwise, is it just before school and after school? Is it during lunch? Is it during passing? Is it, of course, the letter D, with permission from the teacher, which the law says, or is it really only after the day and everything's done? And so those are kind of the questions we're asking. School districts across the state are having these same conversations. This is an example of what some school districts' policy looks like. Some looks at elementary, middle, and high. And what our policy is, it follows the law, but it gives individual schools the opportunity to set some of those rules and consequences for students. So for the most part, our elementary schools and middle schools are no use at all, not during lunch, not during passing. And for the most part, our high schools allow it during lunch and during passing. We're looking at creating a district policy that is uniform so that it's the same at all levels, and even that the consequences are the same, because that's another place where some schools are really tough on it, others are not. And again, I started with fair, firm, and consistent when you come to discipline, and you have to be that way. But the other side of that is we don't want, teachers and administrators that this becomes the only thing that they do all day long, right? So there has to be some sort of middle ground that we all agree on that is appropriate and also doesn't disrupt learning. So we ask for your feedback. There's a QR code there. If you're online, you can see it there. The QR code is all over the tables back there. We welcome that feedback, and if you don't have your phone here tonight or you want to just think about it and do it at home, it's on our website as well. And as I mentioned, we will be discussing this at a board meeting or a board workshop first in March, and then subsequent board meetings. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Dr. Brown. I think we're wrapped up, and the board and I will be around for individual questions and answers. And again, we thank everybody for coming this evening.
And once again, as the Office of Strategic Partnerships, we thank everyone for being here tonight, for posing the questions, and we welcome you to stay to have a conversation with the board members and the superintendent, and to provide feedback on our district cell phone policy. Thank you, good evening, and have a nice evening.